Well, today I want to talk to you guys about something that we all have and none of us like. Something we all have and none of us like. But before I talk about that, I got a question for you. How awesome would it be if you could do anything you've ever wanted without having to learn it first? If you didn't have to go through the process of figuring something out, like flying a jet, you could just well, I'm going to go fly a fighter jet today. Hope to see you guys later. Something like that. Or you could go learn a new career. You could be a doctor. You wouldn't have to go to 8 years or 10 years or whatever it is of college. Our neighbor's doing that right now. He's got to go through all this residency and all this stuff. I'm like, man, I got to give it up to doctors. They got a lot of time they have to put in. But if you didn't have to take all the time to do all that stuff, in fact, I went out to social media this last week and I asked the question, if you could do anything and you didn't have to take the time to learn to do it, what would you do? And I got some interesting answers. And here's just a couple of them. So the first one was water ski. That's nice. The flying squirrel suit thing. You guys seen that? You guys jump off a cliff, then that little squirrel suit thing, and then they just sail. And then win the lottery. I'm not sure you can learn to do that, but anyways, swim, stuntman, learn all the languages, be a pilot, everything on Pinterest. And I thought that was a little sad because have you guys ever seen those Pinterest fail videos? I love those videos. They make me feel real good about myself. It's the Pinterest building a cake. This is how beautiful this cake is going to look. And then you do it. And it's like, what happened to this hot mess? Right? So there wouldn't be any more of those because you'd already know how to do it. There wouldn't be any learning curve on that. And actually, if you think about if someone handed you a rocket launcher, you would probably need to know how to do that, right? Probably need to know how to shoot it, especially if you're okay, aim it between these buildings and hit that target. Don't hit the buildings. Point it the right direction, not backwards. You might hurt yourself. So you wouldn't have to learn how to do any of that stuff. But sadly, we all have to take the time to learn things before we do them. We all have to spend the time to go through the process, go through the struggle, go through the hurt, go through the pain of learning to do something. And it's because we've got a gap. We all have a gap between where we are and where we want to be. And that's because God creates growth, an opportunity for growth, with a gap. Now, what in the world is a gap? It's a store. Yeah, it is a store. She got me. She got me. Noted. Fall into the... Wasn't that their slang or their logo or something? Yeah, anyways, moving on. But, okay, so the gap is the distance or the area, the place between where you currently are and where God is either calling you to be or where you are dreaming of being. There is a void in that area that you need to learn, that you need to grow, that you need to figure out. Right? If, like I said before, if you're going to be a doctor, you need to learn a couple things first. I'm not going to go, 10 years. I'm not going to go to some surgeon who just decided to be a doctor yesterday, right? If you're going to be a sandwich maker, a professional sandwich maker, and you've never made a sandwich in your life, you have no clue how to do it. I know it's a simple thing, but you go to this professional sandwich making shop. It's your first day there. There is a difference between when you first start and when you become the pro, right? There's a difference when you first start golfing and when you become the professional. It's that area in between there, that's the gap. That's the area of growth. It's the process, it's the struggle, it's the thing we all have but we all hate because of the time it takes. So I learned that I had a rather large gap when I started doing the sermon. Have you guys heard of Stephen Furtick? Yes. All right, so I love Stephen Furtick. That guy has more energy than anyone I've ever met. In fact, I haven't met him, but I wish I could meet him someday. But anyways, this guy is an amazing preacher. He is so full of passion, so full of energy, so full of knowledge, and when you get done, you feel like you can jump tall buildings in a single bound, right? When he's done talking, you're like, I got this now. It's happening. So I'm like, all right, we're going to do this sermon Stephen Furtick style. I got this. This is going to be so fun, so exciting. I was just like in my head imagining how great and how fun this was going to be. And then I sat down and I started writing a sermon and I was like, oh, I ain't no Stephen Furtick. We've got a little gap here. In fact, a big gap between the idea and all the content of the sermon. We've got a large gap here. So I knew that it was going to take some time. It was going to take some process. Going to take some learning curve. And I know, like, this isn't going to be my best sermon ever. And that's okay. Yeah. But it's going to be a sermon. And it's going to be a growth period for me. It's going to be my gap. And that's all right. I'm okay with that. So, there's gaps in everything. Everything in life, there's a gap. There's a gap in starting a business. So if we look at the sandwich making guy, right? If he's going to start a business, he's like, okay, I came into the shop first day. I've worked a couple years. I'm a professional sandwich making dude. I got this. And he decides to start his own sandwich shop. How exciting, right? He's got this dream of, man, I'm going to do everything so much better. Everything they're doing wrong at their sandwich shop, I'm going to do so much better at my sandwich shop. I'm going to do it right. But the only problem with that is he knows the job, but he doesn't know the business. Knows the job, but he doesn't know the business. Because you can be so excited about something, so hyped up about something, and in your mind you can have it all planned out. But when you sit down to actually do it, you realize your gap. You realize you don't have what it takes to produce the position, the dream, the promise that God has put on your plate. And it's a struggle. There's gaps in relationships with your family, with your parents, with your friends, people around you that you deal with at work. There's gaps. There's gaps in marriage. That's a heavy one. So here's the funny part. When I got married, I was like, this is going to be so awesome. We're going to get married and the gap will be filled. This is like the start of something amazing. And then I got married and realized that wasn't the filling of the gap. That was the start of the gap. Because how many of you know that when you start dating someone or you get in a relationship or you get married, that person's different than you are? They don't have the same viewpoints that you have. They don't do things the way you do them. They leave messes in places you wouldn't leave messes. They leave things sitting around that you wouldn't leave sitting around. They don't clean the tables. The toilet. Should we go there? No? Okay. You know what I'm talking about, though. Those guys are the guilty ones on that one. I'll admit that. So, but anyways, but in marriage, there's so many gaps. Some of them are bigger. Some of them are smaller. So I know in my marriage, I had a huge gap that we didn't deal with for 5 years. We're like, okay, well, we'll just make this worse. We almost got divorced like twice. I promise you. But we found out after beating our heads against a wall forever and trying to do it our own way that we decided we should let's try this God's way. Let's see what God has to say about this. Let's see what God wants us to do instead of me trying to control the situation. See, my wife and I, her family, her mom wore the pants in the house. My family, my dad wore the pants in the house. So when we got married, we brought those two ideals together, we both thought we were running the show. It was ugly. We both didn't fit in the same pair of pants. Touche, bigger pants. But we had to go through counseling. We finally decided, like, hey, maybe we need an outside perspective on this. So we got some counseling. We got some direction. We found out, though, oh, hey, we're doing this totally wrong. So we got some help from someone else that knew more about it than we did. So it helped us through that gap. You'll fill the gap, and sometimes it'll start getting emptied out a little bit. You'll fill it up a little bit more, and sometimes it'll get emptied out a little bit. That's okay. It's about the process, not the position. It's about the process, not the position. There's gaps in careers. Like I said, the doctor thing, the sandwich making thing. You get out of high school and you think you're going to conquer the world. I thought I did. I was like, oh yes, I can do anything. This is going to be amazing. Hold on, world. Hold on. Van is coming. Quickly learned out that I couldn't do anything that I wanted to, even though I tried. Thought I was going to be a professional stuntman there for a while. That was interesting. I am still standing in front of you today by the grace of God. So another big gap that most of us have, in fact, I think we all deal with this at some point in time, is self-confidence. Right? We all struggle with self-confidence. We all have a big gap in where we are right now and where God says we should be, where God has graced us to be. And it's hard. It's hard saying that I'm okay with where I'm at. I know I'm going through the process and I'm going to get to where I want to be. I know I'm not there right now, but I'm working on it. That's okay. It's okay to not be okay. All right? There's even a song about that, I think, right? It's okay to not be okay. You're working through the process. Do we need gaps, though? Are they really necessary? Is it something that we really need? I mean, life would be so much easier if we didn't have these stinking gaps. I could just do whatever I wanted, right? I know I'd be immediately jumping, like I said, in a fighter pilot doing Top Gun flybys. It's my dream. So if you're doing the Air Force, just let me know when I can make that possible. But do we really need gaps? And I think the answer is yes, we do. We need gaps. We have to have a gap. It has to be a void there. There has to be an open space there. And the reason why we need that open space, that lack of knowledge, the lack of knowing how to do something, the lack of confidence in an area, is because if there wasn't a gap there, there wouldn't be any place for God to grow you. God needs some room to make a difference in your life. Pastor Alex on stage, he said, putting himself aside and really thinking about God and opening that way. Push yourself aside for a minute. Push your thoughts aside. Let God in. Make a space for him in your life. Let him do some awesome stuff. Let him make a difference. God creates opportunity for growth with a gap. Can we put that? I put a photo. I should have put this up earlier, but can we put that photo up there? So here's the gap. So where we are, giant chasm, Grand Canyon area, right? And then where we're going. Where we are, the gap, where we're going. Do you know, we always talk about foundation of Christian faith, right? How do you build a foundation for a house? You dig a gap. Right? You dig a gap. And the foundation goes in the gap. What you're building goes in the gap. It's not going to happen overnight. It's a process. It's a struggle. You're going to have to get the shovel out, do some digging, make some room, and start the work, the footwork, the groundwork to build the foundation. Because how many know you can't just go ahead and dump a whole bunch of concrete in that hole, right? You got to do some forms. You got to do some packing. You got to put some gravel in there. You got to do some groundwork. Can't just expect that it's all going to come to you overnight. So when we think about our gaps, there's two different focuses that we usually have. The first one is we focus on the failure. We focus on the failure. I had a friend earlier this year that I've been working with, and for her, she decided that she had a calling on her heart. She decided that, hey, I'm going to finally start. I'm a Christian. I've been calling myself a Christian, and I don't feel like I'm doing what Christians should be doing. I don't feel like I feel like a faux Christian. I mean, I know a lot of us feel that way. A faux Christian, fake Christian. So for her, she was like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to be a real Christian. I'm going to do what a real Christian looks like, in quotation marks. So she decided she's going to get out her Bible. She's going to buy a devotional guide, and she's going to start doing these devotionals every single day, and she's going to read her Bible every single day, and she's going to connect with God every single day through that, and it's going to be amazing, and she's got a goal, and she's going to go for it. But what kept happening, she kept falling on her face repeatedly. She kept saying, I just can't do this. It's a struggle. I don't have it in me. I kept falling. And pretty soon, instead of her focus being on God where she wanted to be, all she could see was the failure that was happening. It's not failure. It's a process. It's called growth. Growth hurts. You guys all know if you lift weights, or if you don't lift weights and then you decide to go lift something heavy the next day, especially if you're my age or older, Pastor Alex, you're going to be hurting the next day. Like, what did I do? My arm's going to fall off. No, you just picked up a shovel. You're going to be all right. But it's because you're building something, you're growing muscle, you're using things you haven't used before or not for a long time. So you're strengthening that. You're growing it. So there's going to be some pain through the process, but don't focus on the pain, okay? When we focus on the pain, we lose track of the promise. The pain can hurt so bad we can miss the promise that God has put in front of us. The promise is what we're shooting for. We can start doubting in that failure. We can doubt that God is with us. We can doubt that it's possible. We can doubt that God can do this in our life and that we have the ability to do it. In fact, if we look at Abraham, if we put that verse up there, Genesis 17:17. Okay, so Abraham, old dude, old wrinkly man, right? So we think when we're in our 30s, like, especially, no offense, woman, but if the clock is ticking. My wife is a bit, I don't know. We're not going to go there. Anyways, I'm going to put the shovel over in the corner, and we're just going to walk away from that one right now. Anyways, we think like when we're in our 30s, like, oh no, about out of time to have kids. Well, Abraham, this dude was like 75, and God promised him a child. So let's read what it says here. It says, Abraham fell face down, he laughed, and said to himself, will a son be born to a man 100 years old? Will Sarah bear a child at the age of 90? So not only was he 75, but by the time this was going to happen, he was going to be 100, and his wife was going to be 90. Ladies, can you imagine having a baby at 90? I'm not a lady, and I still can't imagine it, so. But anyways, he laughed. He thought it was hilarious, right? because he didn't realize the power that God had and could do through him. I think we all miss that a lot. God can do all this stuff, but he needs us to do it here on earth. Right? He's got this power, but he needs the people to produce the product. You can have a whole bunch of power. You can have a jet engine that is amazing, but if you're not doing anything with it, it's just going to sit there and look pretty and rust out. Right? It has no power until it's in the person's hand. So God needs you to do that. And that's what he was doing with Abraham. He's like, hey, I'm going to use you to build a nation. I'm going to use you to just fill this world and build a nation of people. And he was going to do it when he was 100 years old. Don't doubt the failure. We often fill our God's mouth with our expectations. You guys ever done that? I know I do this all the time. In fact, my friend that I was talking about earlier, she did this. This is what is expected of me. This is what I need to do in order to become a great quote-unquote Christian. And we think that, okay, I'm going to do step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'm going to do them in that order, and it's going to be great. And this is what God's expecting of me, and that's how you become a good Christian. And no, it's not, right? We always put these thoughts in our head and bypass the word that God is giving us. So don't forget, some of your failure might be becoming from your own expectations. God doesn't necessarily expect that of you. He knows you. He knows you very well. He knows you better than you know yourself. He knows where you're at. He knows what you're going through. He knows what you're struggling with. He knows what annoys you. He might put it in front of you a couple times to help you work that out. But he knows you. So don't put expectations in place that you are saying from God when they're not. Get rid of those expectations and just start listening a little. Open up and listen. We always look at successful people, right? We always think like, oh man, they're so amazing. I can do that too, or I wish I could do that. They're doing this and doing that and doing this, but they had to go through a whole lot of failures first. Right? You don't just build a skyscraper on your first day on the job. Right? It doesn't just happen. There is a process. There's going to be some ups and downs. You're going to fail, but you're going to learn from that failure. And I don't even know why I'm still calling it failure, because it is growth. And it's part of the process that we're all going through. The other mindset that we all have is the end game mindset. Typically, this is us guys. I'm throwing us underneath the bus. But it's not always the guys. I know a lot of women that have the same problem. But end game mindset. What is end game mindset? Okay, let's put that picture up on the screen again. So where you are, gap, where you're going. So if you have an end game mindset, you already think you're at where you're going. You try to skip the gap. You try to get rid of that struggle. Like, I don't need that. I got this figured out. I'm just going to do some brain surgery today. Don't mind me. And you try to skip the process. You try to skip the gap. And a lot of the time, the biggest problem that us people with that endgame mindset have is pride. It gets in the way. It's real annoying. Right? Because we think we've got this, we can do this. I don't need God. I don't need nobody else. I'm a genius. Welcome to my world. I'm walking in the room. You better know it. Right? But pride is one of the biggest inhibitors to growth, because if you think you've got it figured out, you aren't going to try to figure it out. Right? You're not going to go on YouTube and, hey, how do we build a skyscraper? Right? How do I build that awesome cake for my kid? How do I make this playground? How do I make this cool recipe that this awesome chef made? How do I do all of this stuff? If you're saying, I've got this figured out already, you're going to miss everything that God has for you in the gap. you're going to overstep it, and you're going to miss everything that he has for you. What the end game mindset tries to do is build a bridge. By building a bridge over the gap, you're only building a bridge to failure. Only building a bridge to failure. That's where it's not going to get you to position. It's not going to get you to promise. It's only going to get you to failure, because I'm sorry, but that little rope bridge thing with the planks of wood you got going on, it ain't going to last. There's alligators sitting down there waiting for you. So don't build it. You'll only fail. If you think about like an NFL, I don't play football, but can you imagine me signing up for football? I don't have the size or mass required of a football player, but if I okay, it's opening day of season, I think I'm going to go sign up for the Vikings. Don't hate. Pick your favorite team, insert that team there. All right. So imagine going and signing up for the NFL and you've never played a lick of football in your life. Exactly. You're like, who's that guy out there that's like crying on the ground in the corner? What happened to him? Right? That's what building a bridge does. Skipping the process only leads to failure. You're going to get slaughtered out there. And you're going to come crashing down. And often, when you come crashing down, you give up. You're like, oh, this wasn't for me because I don't know how to do it. No, you got to go through that gap. You got to fight your way through it. Because the gap will shape who you will become, not who you are. It'll shape who you will become. So, how do we deal with the gap? If we have to do it, if we have to go through this annoying, unbearable, stinking process, how do we deal with it? The first thing, I will tell you, Vadim. Got some commentary up here in the front row. The first thing is enjoy the gap. Enjoy it. It's not this horrible thing that we make it out to be. Yes, it's tough. Yes, it's a struggle. Yes, it's ups and downs. But enjoy it. It's temporary. You think about, I think about like when I was in college. I was so poor, guys. Like, lower than ramen noodle poor in college. But we got creative. Like, you can add some eggs to some ramen noodles. You can put some pasta sauce on it and act like it's like handmade pasta. Add some oregano, get it all fancy. Ramens are awesome. But I was so poor in college, and I was married, and it was rough. Like, there was days I'm like, I don't know if we're going to be able to make rent this month. Let's go sell some stuff. Right? But all I wanted was the position of being secure as a husband. Being able to provide for my family. That is all that I wanted, but all that I had was ramen noodles. So there was a lot of growing that happened in there, and we got really creative. Like, honestly, I look back now, in the time, I was like, this is horrible. Why would God make me do this? I am sick of my 200 pack of ramen noodles, but I'm going to keep doing it because that's all I've got. Do you know you can buy like 6 of those things for $1.29? How awesome is that? Yeah, it's a good deal. And you can make them in a microwave. Or over a campfire, whatever. Just don't do it in your house. Where was I going with that? I forgot. But anyways, we got really creative when it came to making the dollar stretch in that time of our life. And I look back now and I was like, that was actually a lot of fun. In the time, I hated it because all I could see was I wasn't in the position I wanted to be. But really, that was a lot of fun. We came up with some crazy ideas to make life work, to go on dates. Free dates. It's possible. Free dates are possible, people. If you're complaining that you can't go on a date because it costs too much money, free dates are a thing. and you can figure it out. You can get creative, all right? Husbands, your wife is probably elbowing you in the side right now. Anyways, but I look back, I didn't see it at the time, but I look back now and I'm like, man, that was a lot of fun. I almost wish we could do it again, but I don't want to be that poor. So focus on the why, not the what. How do you get through the gap? You focus on the why, not the what. And this awesome quote came from my good friend Andy Brower over here. But you think about Jesus, right? So this guy had to be crucified, right? He knew it too. He knew it was going to happen. He was going to be tortured to the point of death. That is what was going to happen. But he didn't focus on what was going to happen. He focused on why it was going to happen. If Jesus focused on the what, do you think we'd have salvation today? Right? I know if it was me, sorry guys, deal's off. I ain't doing that. I ain't hanging on no cross. You ain't whipping me with that nasty thing. Get out of here. Right? But he focused on the why. So know why you're doing what you're doing. Know why you're doing it, because if you know why you're doing it, you're not focusing on the hurt and the process and the pain of it. You're focusing on the bigger picture. You're focusing on why you're doing it, and you're focusing on how it's all going to come together in the end. And that's a lot better view than I broke this Lego tower for the 50th time. It's just not going to work for me. I can't get my Lego tower to 10 feet. Says my son Jet. But right, there's going to be some failure, but focus on the why, not the what. In the gap, you will become who God intends you to be. In the gap, you'll become who God intends you to be. This is the growth process, right? So what you thought was in the beginning, what you thought was the product, the position where you want to be, might not be in the end what you thought it was going to be. I know when I first started coming to church here 7 years ago, which was like flew by, I had no intentions of coming and standing up here in front of you guys. In fact, that was the last thing I wanted to do. Ask any of my friends. But pretty soon, God was like, I want you to serve. So I started serving on the First Impressions team, right? And then I got roped into something else. But it was the path that God had for me, not the path that I had for me. And man, guys, has my life been so much better. I always say ultimate happiness comes when God's will aligns with your dream, or vice versa, when your dream aligns with God's will. You can never be more happy when those two things line up perfectly. And it is an amazing experience. It might seem a little awkward and rough at first. You might get a little nervous at times, but it's going to be amazing. Might have to cut this a little short. I didn't think that was possible. Okay. All right. Wars aren't fought on bridges. They're fought in trenches. Okay? You are in a battle at some points in your gap. It's going to be hard. It's going to be tough. But here's one thing I'm going to recommend to you. Find a mentor. Find someone who's fought the war before. Find someone who's been in the same shoes, someone who's made it through and gone through all that muck. Get some guidance. You don't realize how eye-opening it can be for you. I know when writing this sermon, right, I was like, oh, there's a giant gap here. I don't know what's going on. I don't know how to do this. And I sat down with Pastor Alex, and I was like, all right, here's what I got. I just vomited on him. And he's like, okay, well, here's what you need to do. And I got some direction, and guys, holy smokes. Like, thank you, Jesus, because this would have been an even bigger train wreck. So get in the trenches, fight the war with someone that's done it before. You're not alone. The gap is big, but we think, again, I'm going to go back to Jesus. How many years did he go before he fulfilled the promise? 30 years. 30 years he had to go through before he fulfilled the promise. He had to fill the gap before he could fulfill the promise. That gap was 30 years. We get upset when we have a gap of 2 days. Right? Know that it's going to take some time and be okay with that. Understand that, yes, you're here, but you're going to get there. It's going to take some time. You know, the bigger the dream, the bigger the gap. The bigger the dream, the bigger the gap. If you're going to build a sandwich, that's going to be a lot smaller gap than building a skyscraper. It's going to take a lot more time and a lot more knowledge to figure out how to build a skyscraper than it is going to be to build your bologna sandwich. Right? So the bigger the gap, or the bigger the dream, the bigger the promise that God has given you, the bigger the gap is going to be. The last thing I'm going to leave you with, actually the last 2 things I'm going to leave you with, are slow down. My friend who was trying to become that great Christian, who was working on all these devotionals and everything, I gave her a word of advice. Here's what I told her. I'm like, stop. Stop everything. Stop doing what you're doing. Stop devotionals. Stop reading your Bible. Yes, I said that. I said it. And here's what I told her to do instead. I'm like, here's the first thing I want you to do when you get up in the day. Don't get out of your bed. Don't put your glasses on. Don't brush your teeth. Don't go to the toilet. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to say a prayer. It doesn't have to be this big earth-shattering, Holy Spirit-filled, bringing down the heavens prayer. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. Because prayer is a conversation. Prayer is a connection. Prayer is forming a relationship with God, your Father. It's about the relation. He doesn't want you to be this thing, this image. He wants you to have a relationship with him, right? He wants that focus. So, guys, over a course of 3 weeks, the person who I talked to that first day and the person who I talked to at the end of the 3 weeks was 2 totally different people. Instead of, I can't do this, I don't have the power in me, I don't know what's going on, she was like, God is so amazing. He has changed me so much in these few weeks. So take smaller steps. You can't step over the process, right? You can't step over it. You still got to walk through it. And skipping steps doesn't make it work, right? It's going to lead to failure. And the last thing I want you to do is pat yourself on the back. Pat yourself on the back. You guys have seen me do this before. Everyone, all right, we're going to do this as an exercise, as a group. Put your hand out in front of you. This is everyone. Come on now, slackers. There you go. Okay, so bend it at the elbow. Keep going until you reach your back. And repeat the process 5 to 10 times. Realize that you're not where you were. You're not where you started in this process. You're in the gap still, but you've built the gap up a little bit. My friend who was going through this, I said, you know, like, look where you were when we talked 3 weeks ago. And look where you are now. She's like, oh, I didn't even realize that. I've actually come with some distance. Yeah. Give yourself a pat on the back. Realize that you've made some progress and enjoy that progress. Enjoy the process. Don't forget, God's with you, right? He's going to help you through this process, and everything is going to be okay. All right.
Thanks for tuning in to New Life Sermon Series Online. If you're blessed by these messages and are interested in helping spread the Word of God to others, make an investment today. You can give at newlifechurchsf.org. If you have a story or a testimony to share, let us know on our website as well. We hope you have a blessed day and enjoy today's message by Pastor Alex.